When it comes to making money, people are often accustomed to looking at what the latest tech stock is. Maybe it's artificial intelligence. But if you see something real old school, it puts all that to shame. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today, I want to talk about copper. They call it Dr. Copper, all right? And in today's video, we are going to expand on that, expand on different forms of these metals and how that's related to energy, electric vehicles, this, the green movement, all that stuff right here and now. And then I want to expand. I want to go into, some other things related to energy and so on. Let's begin by taking a look at this. Jeff Curry says copper is the best trade he's seen in his career. Prices have got to go higher, the commodities veteran says. Should put a little caveat there that usually when too many people come to the table talking about one thing, it's probably on its way out, at least temporarily, because that's the way it works. It's the madness of crowds. The world is going to need a lot more copper to power everything from electric vehicles to updated grids and data centers. At the same time, getting new mines online is extremely slow process, one that's made all the more difficult by political and environmental concerns. The mismatch between rapidly growing demand and sluggish supply has already helped push copper prices to more than $10,000 a ton in London trading this week. What's important to note here is that this applies to many different types of commodities. It takes a long time. Like I've said with nuclear and uranium, if they were to agree today, okay, let's build a nuclear reactor. They haven't done that, and it takes a long time to get through all that red tape, all the politics. If they agreed today, it would take many years to get that online. And so there's this time differential where we got to understand there's demand, and demand gets more every year, right? Well, what happens here is that you have this, price increases throughout that period until the demand is met. All right. The most compelling trade I've ever seen in my 30 plus years doing this. I can actually show you the chart here in just a second. Looking at it, you could see, they get into it. The links will be in the description if you really wanted to get into all of it. But let me just show you. Look at the potential military spend in the United States. $95 billion on munitions. We look at what's going on in places like Germany, $100 billion of military spend. You've got all three going much stronger than what we would have thought 2 to 3 years ago. That's the price gone crazy, and usually when we get these type of patterns, that's a bad sign actually. But I'm just bringing it to you, not to tell you, hey, this is what you should buy. I'm just showing you, okay? You've got a lot of the different factors that make up like reasons and compelling reasons to get copper. There's an infinite amount, and basically the price was depressed for a long period of time, and that's usually the way it works. All right, when things are out of fashion and so on, you tend to see that becoming an excellent time for an opportunity to get it. Okay. You got more energy, more food, and you've had more labor, which helped create the disinflationary pressures that we saw for the last several years. I'm not going to say it's the only cause, but put a big headwind to the commodity story. They're talking about different reasons for this. I think that for a lot of people, it's just, we look at gold, we look at silver, but copper doesn't get that much attention. Usually copper goes along with the economic growth in general. So if there's, the idea that no, we're not going to have a lot of economic growth, copper can be subdued for a while. If, you see the stories, oh, economy's growing, no recession, all that stuff, well, copper can start to do well. That's important, okay? Look at the price here of the commodity spot index, and you'll see that it has ticked up recently, going back to levels. Basically, we haven't seen this since earlier in 2023. Will it continue? Well, that's anybody's best guess. But the trend, just see, if you ignore that spike that occurred right in 2022, we are still well above trend, and just shows us how much we're paying for stuff. Everything is super expensive. When we look at commodity spot index, that is certainly one aspect that we need to understand. When we look at the production, this is 2023 production. I just wanted to break it down by country as well, giving you a look at who's actually making this stuff. All right. Every time you see an earthquake in Chile, which does happen, suddenly copper starts to rise. Keep that in mind. Peru is there, 2.6 million, about half of what Chile produces. China is big on that. And my goodness, Canada. Wow. Great stuff. Yeah. Let's just move on. But I just wanted to show you this in terms of production so you could see it for yourself. And I think it's really important just to understand who I did a whole video about this, by the way, a while ago, but who produces what, so that when there are issues, you already know. You could just snap your fingers. I know what's going to be affected as a result of that. Looking at this, you could see the thieves cutting cables from Tesla charging stations in Vallejo. They're stealing the material inside. They have thick cables which have a lot of copper in them, and so people are stealing that. Nothing that you haven't heard of before. Of course, look on this aspect where we need more energy. That's what I'm showing you this for. Asia embraces coal as the US rejects it. If you remember, many years ago, Obama said, yeah, you could start a business in coal, but we're going to bankrupt you. Okay, they know that. So if you're going in with that, I mean, it is pretty obvious to me that, you're fighting an uphill battle. However, in Asia, they're using a lot of that coal. They're saying, we need to get going. We need to grow. You guys, when it was your turn to grow, you were using coal. Now we're not allowed to use it. We're in our early growth stages, right? For a lot of these countries. So they're saying, hey, that's not fair. We're just going to keep doing it. Although China is, I'll show you in a second here, they've got more solar. They've got more. But, it all depends on the population and so on. There's many factors. This is talking about nuclear's revival, and the only reason I'm showing you this here is that there are going to be these new technologies and new ways to do things that will be much better, more efficient than the old way. I think a lot of the nuclear reactors, the old school ones, they're leaking. They are not efficient. We got a problem with nuclear waste afterwards. The new ones supposedly don't have these issues or significantly less. So understand that when we're talking about uranium, these countries, are signing on to it. They're going in that direction. And so we got to be aware of that. So we got copper. We've got uranium as well. That's another one. China is a critical global supplier. Full decoupling may be impossible because we always talk about, let's get away from China. China's all this. We're just gonna put tariffs and that's it. They're gonna go bye-bye. I think it's important to note that you can't get away from them. You just can't, because all the jobs were shipped offshore. All the manufacturing was done overseas. But now we're gonna diversify our supply chain. In many cases, don't look at, for instance, semiconductors, but look at all these other cases. I have, other articles. Cambodia builds 75 factories. Who owns those factories? China. You look at this example again and again and again. China is opening up those factories. Now, why are they doing that? Well, first of all, it's not the country opening up the factories. It's a business owner saying, we have to pay, let's just say it was equivalent of $7 an hour to our workers in China. Well, what if I open up a factory in Cambodia? I could pay them half. All right, let's open up a factory in Cambodia. So that's what they're doing, and getting around the tariffs at the same time. So they're going to have higher profit margins probably. Okay. So I think that's important just to understand what's actually happening here, where the energy is coming from, where the energy is going to, because these countries are the ones that are going to need a lot of that energy. And we'll see how that develops over the next little while. Here you could see solar, for example. We always think of like China using a lot of coal and so on. Certainly they do. They're not shy from that, but you can see right here, massively, China has a lot of solar energy, using a lot of solar energy. All right. And then just showing us why Germany is choosing natural gas over nuclear power. So they're shutting down their nuclear. And this is very different than what we've seen in some of the other places. All right. I find it strange because of everything that happened with Russia that they're doing this, but this is the way it goes, right? We'll see what happens. I honestly don't know. How do you get any growth with no energy? But hey, okay, that's what they're doing. This is just showing us top exports in Asian countries. Just, food for thought. You can look at it. Coal coming from Mongolia, for instance. We have Kazakhstan, petroleum products. Just looking at that, what do these countries produce? Who's importing? Who's exporting? A lot of these countries are doing business with each other. They're doing business with each other and not necessarily as much with the US as it used to be. There is a decoupling in a sense, but not in the way we are told. Just like, we're shipping the jobs. Okay, well, we'll friend shore. That's right. We're going to do friend shoring and bring the jobs to Mexico. At least it's within North America. Oh, but by the way, in often cases, not in all cases, but there's many cases where the Chinese are opening factories in Mexico, just like the Chinese have opened factories in the north part of Italy. You got to understand the way the world works. All right? I see people, they're so confused oftentimes about what's happening. But certainly, this is something that, over time we're gonna figure out. Look, what's happening with energy? You got the copper trade, you got the clean energy trade, whether you agree with it or not. This is now looking attractive for copper after looking not so attractive. The thing about copper, which I think is different than uranium, is that with uranium, if these countries are going to sign on to your, nuclear, which they seem to be doing so, they are going to need it. They're going to be the buyers. You and I are not going to buy uranium, although you can buy physical sprott uranium, but we're not using that. In the case of copper, we may build a house. We need some copper. If somebody's going to build a big building, they're going to need copper. So copper is being used industrial metal, but when I look at what's happening with uranium, that's a government spends as much money as they want, even when it's completely irresponsible. That's a different story. So keep that in mind. Look at the different options that are out there. There's different companies, there's ETFs, there's all kinds of things that could be of interest to you. Just do your homework. Don't just jump into anything. It's better to be in their baby steps than to just go all out and think you're going to be, rich tomorrow. Don't do that. Do your proper due diligence. All right. If you want to know more information, you got to tune in each and every day. I bring out videos every day. All I ask is that you hit that thumbs up button, because that supports me, supports the channel, and I want to thank you for that. And of course, as always, if you're interested, I've got live classes every single weekend on Friday. I got it on Sunday as well. If you're interested in learning more about that, there's a link at the top of this description. And as always, take care. See you tomorrow.